Ego is talked about a lot in the media, entertainment, and various psychology and philosophical studies, but its definition wavers from person to person. You may have heard an entertainment news anchor talk about an actor's ego or big head and that it's ruining their career. You might have even said it yourself. Well, today, I'd like to talk to you about this monster inside all of us and why we should aim to rid ourselves of it. Ego has been the root cause of wars, violence, backstabbing, jealousy, and suffering of all kinds. We all kind of know what the ego is, but if I asked you what it was, could you really explain it to me? Well, today I'm here to talk about what the ego is in reference to its spiritual definition. You might be surprised that it's not just Hollywood actors, narcissists, and pro athletes who have egos, but it's all of us. Most humans, 99.9% of humans have an ego. Maybe babies or children under a certain age or highly spiritual and present people are the only ones in this world who don't have an ego. It may surprise you to hear this, but even though I'm teaching you about ego, I too have an ego, although it's significantly smaller and more controlled in me now. So what is the ego? Ego is something that evolved in us as humans throughout our history. It might have been a survival tactic or something to help mating or finding a partner. If you watch nature documentaries, you'll notice that many animals, mostly males but some females, have features that are used to stand out over the other males or females that are fighting for a mate. In some birds, they even have luminescent colors and dances that can attract the opposite sex and set them apart from other birds. Some animals may be bigger and stronger and fight others to become the dominant animal and thus attract a mate. When we evolved into humans, this trait most likely carried over. But when our ability to think kicked in and evolved, so did our ego. It is a very primal part of us. It's something that carried over from our animal ancestors, and as humans evolved, so has come the time for the ego to dissolve. To be more precise, the ego is the thing in us that wants. It wants more and bigger and better. It wants to stand out and be different, better, higher, and more than everyone else around them. The ego is the thing inside us that says, we don't have enough. We need more. And once we get more, we need more, and it never ends. It is the thing that is telling us to watch our backs, that someone is scheming against us, that we need to do something now or we'll fall far behind. Ego makes us think that we are separate from others, not just people around us, our family, our friends, neighbors, co-workers, homeless, poor, rich, the political, but animals, nature, dogs, cats, and everything in between. Everyone has an ego, just at varying degrees of unconsciousness. Now you might say to me, well, I have an ego and I get it, but my ego is small and I can keep it that way. And there are others out there like politicians and actors and other people who have way bigger egos than mine, and my ego will never get that big. No, it's true. It may not ever get that big, so big that you backstab a friend or drop a nuke or rig elections or lie, cheat, scam others. You may never do that. But the more you feed your ego, the bigger it gets. Every human on this earth has an ego, and we see extreme examples in our world. A politician inciting panic and dropping bombs and missiles on another country, an actor or producer abusing their power and assaulting or harassing coworkers, wars, murder, jealousy, rage, and all forms of violence are all produced by ego. These are all very extreme examples, however, and most of us would not ever have to deal with any of the things or many of the things I mentioned. Some examples of ego that might hit closer to home would be feeling the need to stand out, feeling that you are superior to others, wanting to always win, wanting to make others look bad and thus elevate yourself, comparing yourself to others, judging others. No matter how unconscious another person is, no matter how much ego they have, once you judge them, you are feeding your own ego. You are growing the monster inside. When you judge others, you elevate yourself, and your ego strengthens. It's fine to recognize the ego in others or the unconsciousness in others, but you can recognize the ego in someone and leave it as that, as fact. But when you start to add mind thoughts like, her ego is out of control, she's crazy, that is just your ego wanting to sound better than the other. It is always better to recognize the ego in yourself. When you notice your ego, or an egoic thought arise in your mind, you can even just laugh it off. You can say, nice one, I see you, little monster, or whatever you want to say. When you see it in yourself and recognize it in yourself, it dissolves. Some people, they don't understand what ego is, and it just grows and grows and grows inside them and creates a lot of tension, stress, not only inwardly in forms of disease, sickness, and ailments, but outwardly in forms of violence, jealousy, deceit, and many, many other variations. Now, you may ask me, why is ego so bad? If animals had a form of this, why is it so bad for humans to have it? Well, animals are living in another state, another form of consciousness, which can be described as below humans on an evolutionary scale. Below humans in the way that they don't have the ability to think as we do, to reflect on the past and to decipher what they're doing wrong. Humans have evolved from the animal state, and although we carry some of our primal animalistic characteristics over with us, they are no longer needed. For instance, an animal might die or their family might die if they are not as strong as they can be, or even the strongest. They also need to fight and scrap and hunt for food every day, where humans can just go to a grocery store. They also have to fight others and stand out from others to gain a mate, because there are not as many mates as we have in the human world. The human population is so massive now that we're not really struggling to find mates because there's so many choices out there. The truth is, the ego is not needed anymore. We have evolved, and it's time for the ego to go. And the reason I say the ego needs to go is because it is truly destroying our Earth and humanity. It is destroying humanity in ways we see every day. War is a direct correlation to ego. Politics is what Eckhart Tolle calls a superego, which is a mass collection of extreme egos forming a unit. My side is better than your side. We need to attack the other side before they attack us. That side or that country is inferior or dangerous, and we need to attack and kill them before they do it to us. This is just a magnification of what we feel as individuals on a day-to-day basis. It all derives from ego. Ego can be as small as any form of wanting to separate yourself from the other. Maybe you get tattoos so you can stand out from other people. or flashy clothes to look better than other people. These small forms of ego boosting may seem insignificant, but if you do this constantly, every day, which most of us do, they snowball and get bigger and bigger, and soon it can create a monster. One that you had only seen in extremes of politics or entertainment, so you can get attention. How can we dissolve the ego? I use the word dissolve because when you fight against something, that is just more ego. Some people talk about fighting against cancer, or fighting against terrorism, or the war on drugs. These all sound like great causes, but in fact, they all arise out of ego. To dissolve the ego, you must first recognize it in yourself. Do this simply by recognizing any time the ego pops up. When you recognize yourself judging others in any way, or when you catch yourself trying to win or be number one, to beat others or put them down, elevating yourself, you gotta catch yourself and realize. You can recognize these things without adding any useless thoughts to the recognition. I see my ego, rather than I'm horrible and so egoic. All the extra stuff is not necessary in another form of judgment. Judgment against yourself is still judgment and thus unconscious, but sticking strictly to the facts and recognition is conscious behavior. So step number one is to recognize the ego inside yourself, or what I like to call the little monster. When you recognize the unconsciousness in yourself, you become present in the moment, and the ego cannot survive in the present moment. The ego is always about the future, about the next thing, and is never satisfied with the now. Step number two is to be present. Although when recognizing the ego in yourself, you have become present, it can be useful to continue presence. If you're not sure how to do that, you can watch my previous video on screen right now and in the description below on how to be present. And really, that's it. There's no need to reprimand yourself or talk down to yourself or make yourself feel bad. Ego is a very powerful force, something that humans have had since the beginning of humanity, and not many people have even been aware on what it is or how to dissolve it, or that it even needed dissolving. The reason that many spiritual teachers and guides like myself or Eckhart Tolle believe that the ego needs to be dissolved in humanity is simple. Humans are the number one reason that our earth is dying, and our brothers and sisters are dying. We create weapons, wars, death, famine, pollute the earth, only thinking about profit and overhead, and we only think about us for the most part. When we realize that the only way to change the whole is to first change ourselves individually, is when we realize why our egos need to be dissolved. It's not just about looking at the extreme cases, the politicians, the singers or actors, or the people who are in the public eye. It's us as individuals looking in the mirror and realizing we are all one. We are all connected. And only through taking responsibility in our own change and realizing that we are part of the problem can we really move forward and evolve spiritually and create a conscious, present, and beautiful world. All right, thank you. If you liked that video, if you want to learn more, drop a comment below on what you want me to talk about next, or if you want anything clarified more. This is the video about ego, and it can seem quite complicated, but it all comes down to presence and reflecting and looking in the mirror. So thank you for watching. Drop a like, hit the subscribe. Peace.